welcome back. I'm here with a pretty exciting video for you today, and that is my year in review or bullet journal flip through for all of 2018. So I have here 4 different notebooks. These are notebooks that I used in 2018 for bullet journaling. There's a couple others that I used for notes and like writing brainstorms and things like that, but I'm not gonna share those on here. So I'm going to go through these one by one and kind of talk about the different things I tried throughout the year and whether or not they worked. And if they didn't work, why I don't think they worked. So the first notebook that we have is a Leuchtturm soft cover. So this has the same paper as a typical Leuchtturm, and as you can see, one of the big problems was that I didn't use most of this notebook, and so this one was my year bullet journal. So starting last year, I separated my bullet journaling spreads into like long-term and short-term so that I could have one notebook that would, in theory, stay with me throughout the year and I wouldn't have to keep migrating things over. And then my monthly daily bullet journal I would fill up, be done with, and then move to a new one, and I wouldn't really need to migrate anything. The things that I put in here were first my goals for the whole year. A lot of these didn't happen. Some of them did. Well, actually, I don't think any of them did, and I'm going to talk about that too. Well, I guess I'll talk about it now. None of these goals got done because they were a little bit too rigid and they were overly optimistic. So our game demo did not get done, and this partially was because of a few life events that happened for some of the other people on the team. One of our partners had a baby, and so he was pretty much gone for an entire quarter of the year, and then before that he was just very busy preparing for the baby. And then there were some like personal things in our family that happened that kind of interfered with this a little bit as well. Making 100 art pieces in a year was too much for me. To go from making art very occasionally as a hobby to making 2 pieces every week for an entire year was too much. I managed to stay on task for a couple months, I think, before I started to slowly fall behind, and then I just got more and more behind throughout the year until I just gave up on that task. My writing goals, I actually did pretty good with writing this year, but I worked on different things than what you see here. So I started a new story for November instead of working on a second draft of my 2017 NaNoWriMo novel, and I made some progress with my second draft of this SW project, but in doing so I found out that I really needed to rework some of the outline. I am still really learning kind of how to build a story. You know, it just takes practice, it takes tweaking, and I want it to be good, so I didn't want to dive into this second draft feeling that pieces of my outline were missing, because I know from knowing myself that it wasn't going to work for me. I can't just kind of free write and come up with story as I go. I have to know what I'm doing or I'll just kind of sit there and not do anything. Also, 4 hours a week on writing every single week of the year was a bit much. I really needed to think about this in terms of phases. So like writing phases and not writing phases, where I kind of rest my mind and consume media to build those inherent skills rather than just writing all year long. My app development as well took a little bit of a turn. This project here is still being done, but it's being done in a different way. I kind of restarted it and reframed the goal of the project. And then this project here, I just gave up on it. I don't really have a reason for that one. And then knitting, I did start thinking about Christmas gifts in September, but because of the money issues we were facing at the time, I wasn't able to actually order the yarn and get started until mid-October. So I did get a bit of a head start, but not enough that I wasn't totally slammed in December. But I've learned from it, and this year I have a plan to start in August. So, you know, we iterate and we get better each year. And this side of the spread kind of shows these kind of broken down goals it shows how well I adhered to them. So if I felt like I fulfilled all of my goals, I filled this all the way up. If not, I just drew a little line to indicate that I had recorded that week but I hadn't done anything. I really like this spread, and I'm kind of wondering if maybe I should have done something similar. But because I stopped using this whole notebook, I didn't even fill in, let's say I got through 1 week into quarter 3 before I stopped using this notebook. So these pages in my current notebook are in the form of my happiness project pages where I have my goals and then I have all my habits for each month. I did some money and fitness reviews. I intended to fill these out all throughout the year, but I didn't. I'm not sure that this is ultimately very helpful because I do track all of my money stuff online and I can look at the history of it whenever I want to, so this was kind of a nice way to sit and think about my finances once a month as I fill this in, but other than that, I'm not sure it will be useful after this point. These pages were some of my favorite visually. I just really like the colors, I like these little doodles here, and then I did stick with this one pretty good up until I stopped using this notebook. And then of course you can see here just how far I got behind on my art. So each solid square was when I finished a piece, and then these kind of dashy line squares are when I worked on it. And then these outlines are when I needed to finish each piece to stay on track. And then later I went through and I wrote down the total I should have at the end of each month, slowly counting up to 100. And then what I actually got, let's see, 9 out of 10, 15 out of 18, 21 out of 27. So you can just see how, first I was off by 1, then I was off by 3, then I was off by 6. It's kind of like a pattern, like a really specific pattern, but I did my best and I kind of learned a little bit about my limitations by filling out this spread. And then this I just did a coral color hash mark for when I posted on Instagram, and then a purple hash mark when I posted on YouTube. And this was just a way to see if I was keeping up with each of my social channels. My knitting and writing spreads. As you can see, I did work on my writing quite a bit. This dark purple here is where I kind of struggled through some of a rewrite before I realized that it wasn't going to work, that I really needed to work on the outline quite a bit more before it was going to end up with something kind of finished. And then my knitting, I didn't do much knitting this year up until October, and then I did too much knitting. So instead of doing all of these different yearly trackers, my knitting and my reading and different things are kind of just like a log format instead of a yearly tracker, and this is just to make it a little bit easier on myself. It isn't critical that I know which days of the year I knitted on. It was just something that I thought might be kind of cool, and it ended up being more work than it was worth. And I have a number of these project planning tracker spreads where I would use these cute little stickers, and I have a whole video on this. I think it's called Project Planning in a Bullet Journal, and I do really like these stickers. The only problem is that they're just a tiny bit too big to fit in these, I think they're 5mm squares, and then the stickers are 6mm, I believe. So in order to use them, I kind of had to accept the fact that they weren't going to fit and maybe make a little bit more space. But I have a few different spreads just like this. So I have this one, which was about programming, and I actually messed up the scale of this one. So I had these sections for graphs that filled up faster than the calendar did. So that was kind of a mathematical mistake. And I have a couple of them for social media. So this one, I would actually swap out these stickers when they were filmed and edited and posted. I had different stickers for them, and that was one of the reasons that I wanted to use these stickers in the first place, is because they're very easy. If I wanted to, I could just pull this up and replace it with something else. And I loved seeing these little charts of the slow, consistent growth. This one was pretty steady, but just kind of gentle upward slope. And then I loved filling in these little milestone markers. Wish list, I actually did get quite a bit of stuff off this wish list. Oh, especially 2 Point Hospital, I was really excited about that one. My book list I talked about in my year planning. I filled out these books before the year was over, and then it kind of really tripped me up because, for example, when I read Outlander, you can see it took me 4 months to get through Outlander, and part of this, I realized later that this book is like 900 pages long or something really ridiculous, and I also didn't like it. I know that a lot of people really liked Outlander, but I thought it was terrible, and so the idea that I had to get through it before I could move on was really kind of a downer for me. And I did actually finish this next book. I just didn't put the end date on here, but I think the spread would have worked a lot better for me if I had left them all blank and just filled them in as I went, which is what I'm doing this year. This expense tracker ended up being kind of useless. These I didn't really use. I kind of used them near the beginning of the year, and then I just started writing ideas down in my shorter term bullet journal. This spread, as you can see, I didn't use at all. This one was pretty useful for me. It was just a way to track which kind of recurring cleaning projects that I completed. This was going to be a spread where I wrote down things that I wanted to learn to play on guitar, I believe. I've made a couple, one for guitar and one for piano. This one I didn't even get as far as putting a title down, but I don't know. I haven't really been keeping up with guitar, so I probably won't remake this one. And the currently inked spread is very useful because the date lets me know how long since the last time that pen was cleaned, because I always clean pens when I re-ink them. This was another type of project planning application, and as you can see, I did use this one, but not all the way to the end of its lifespan. Another social media spread, and this one I tracked what I had posted at different points in this timeline, so I could kind of see oh, this one had a little bit of a jump, maybe people really liked this video for some reason, and it kind of helped me look at the types of videos I was creating and how I could improve them. This is just a little test page, more currently inked, another social media spread, and this is kind of where I fell off the social media tracking wagon. I don't know what happened here. I don't know if I kind of stopped posting as much or if it was some algorithm thing, but as you can see, everything just kind of dropped off, flattened out, and it was really disheartening for me. I know that I shouldn't put that much stock into numbers, but it kind of bummed me out to see oh, yep, nobody likes what I'm doing. Yep, still nobody likes it. So I've reworked this spread into something that's a little bit less of a downer when it's not increasing, which makes me feel a little bit better about it. And this spread was a different approach to goals and kind of tracking what I was doing on social media and whether I thought those efforts were giving something back to me. But this I think was right around, so this was the last page I used in this notebook. And to talk more about why I stopped using it was because in my traveler's notebook, I have a limited amount of space, and I had wanted to try new types of planners, and this taking up this much space, it really limited me on what I could include. Now you can see my yearly bullet journal is not even half the size. It's much smaller, much thinner, and it gives me more room for other types of things in this notebook. And so I think if I had started with a much thinner notebook, I would have stuck with this one a little bit better. So there's the yearly notebook. Moving on to the first monthly daily notebook of the year. It was this Limome softcover notebook, and I've talked about this one before. how I really didn't like how stiff the papers are. And here you can hear it. Once I watercolored them, they got really stiff and crackly, and the edges are kind of sharp. And it just made the physical experience of using this notebook not very pleasant. So I was very glad when I reached almost completely to the end of this one, because it meant I could move on to something a little bit thinner, a little bit more friendly for watercolors. And I'm gonna flip through this one a little bit quicker and just mostly talk about the monthly changes I made, because the dailies were pretty much the same throughout the year. So January, I started off tracking the importance of each monthly goal, and then also the weeks of that month that I worked on it, so I could see how much attention I was giving to each different category of goal. I had this very elaborate mood tracker with the Zentangle background, a lot of habits, and you know, I actually did pretty good on these. I'm a little surprised. Nutrition log, gratitude, expenses, these remain pretty static. I did switch it up a little bit later into the year, but for the most part, I just wanted a place to write down gratitude every day, and I just wanted to keep track of what I was spending money on. This early in the year, I was still using pre-made weeklies, and then kind of as I go dailies. And I tried to fill in decorations, but some of it just remained blank, and that's okay. And this is one of my many attempts at time blocking. I tried a lot of different things, and eventually, as you may know, I discovered that the Passion Planner really worked for this. More time blocking. And one thing I noticed when I did my Instagram best 9 of the year was that people, including me, seem to really like these very colorful spreads. So I might try to get more into the kind of doodly, colorful style here. This was a different sort of time blocking, where instead of assigning these to a certain time of day, I would just have 4 hours. I was pretty optimistic at this point. I would put what I wanted to do during each of these blocks of time, and then throughout the evening I would just kind of pick from this list as I had time to work on things. And this week I even did pre-drawn daily sections as well. More time blocking, dailies. And here was February, and in this one I even tried to block out it's kind of like a vertical Gantt chart. I would estimate the time for each section. Like, I think these are art pieces, so I would guess that each of these pieces would take me this long, and we can see I fell a little bit short, but for the most part I think this was really fun to do, and it did kind of give me an idea of how much I was taking on each day, which is one thing I really like Gantt charts for personal use, is just to see each day how much you have on your plate. And then we have just normal habit tracker, mood and productivity, and I kind of angled them outward so that the center was 0. Another nutrition tracker, gratitude, expenses, more time blocking, and as you can see, all these pages have a little bit of metallic on them. I guess metallic is just a New Year thing for me. More time blocking. And this one, you can see I did start kind of accepting that I did not have 4 hours of free time every day when I was trying to do 4 hours of work after work. Really, I was just cutting into like dinner and, you know, relaxing time, things that I really didn't need. There's some more time blocking, a little bit different of a layout here. I was very fond of this spread when I made it. This is a quote from Ray Bradbury's book on writing, and I just really like these little triangles. This spread I use to track all the different exercises for physical therapy that they had me doing. This would have been for my knees again. My knees give me problems a lot, and so I'm usually in and out of PT a couple times a year. Here's a really messy planning page. And right here, I think this was gouache that I tested out in here a little bit. This is another really, really nice spread and another quote from Ray Bradbury. Okay, here we are in March. I did the same thing with my monthly goals where I tracked the importance. I think this was projected time and then actual time, which I never went back to fill out. And this was one of the first times I think I did a symptom tracker where I tracked how often I got headaches, when I was really anxious, and different things like that. Gosh, this month was not great for me, I guess. Gratitude, and this was the first time I did this expense tracker as sort of a bar graph, and I color coded, you know, kind of things that I want but don't really need, and then important things like groceries. And I did track writing in March, and I think this was the month I got confused and I thought Camp NaNoWriMo was in March, and then actually it's in April and July. So I think going into March I thought that Camp NaNoWriMo would be starting. And I did a bit of challenges here. I didn't finish them, especially not all 3 of them, because it was just a bit much to do on top of everything else. Really nice watercolor dailies, but gosh, look at these pages. This week I tried to do kind of like a time tracker down the side here, and a hydration tracker, which I did pretty well at, drinking that water. This spread was inspired by someone on Instagram with the handle Procrastinate Create, and the idea is that each of these horizontal squares represents a 10-minute block of that hour. So this would be like 1 a.m. to 1:10, 1 a.m. to 1:10 to 1:20, 1:20 to 1:30, and so on. This was pretty cool, but I think I gave myself too much flexibility, too many options. This was another spread that I really liked because of all the coral, and I just think it looks nice. And you can see I did simplify the time bars a little bit, so I wasn't tracking every single thing, but just kind of work on specific projects. This was another attempt at blocking things out in advance. This is kind of a weird idea, but looking back on it, it was pretty cool. And it looks like this week I used a running list with letters for the due date, and then I just blocked in. I think I probably started with blocks for when I wanted to work on it and then filled them in when I actually did it, or crossed them out if I did not work on that day. And I used the same method here, and actually, okay, I thought I skipped a week, but I just didn't remember the number. And this month, I think I really touched on something that works very well for me, which is progress bars. I love filling in progress bars, and so anything that kind of tracks progress visually in that way is a huge motivation for me. Unfortunately, I still didn't get everything done because this is a lot of stuff to get done in 1 month, and for some reason when I'm planning it out, it seems totally reasonable. And I also really liked the visuals for this month. The theme was rain, but it got a little bit more abstract near the end here. And it looks like this month I used an actual calendar, which I rarely do. These colors are just so nice. And it looks like I fell off the expense tracking wagon here a little bit. Aha, here's Camp NaNoWriMo. So I did do it. I did not finish it, but that's okay. I think this is where I realized that my draft was not going as expected, and so I started doing some outlining, and then I just spent like an entire month reworking chapter 1 because I wasn't quite ready to accept that it needed more work than I thought it would. And so I do have a much more polished outline that I'm gonna revisit this year. This is another sort of weekly time blocking section where I actually split all of my tasks into sections for the week, which this usually is something I only do on the monthly, but I tried it for the weekly and I must not have liked it very much because I didn't keep doing it after this. This week I actually decorated with gouache and I thought it would kind of like rub off or something, but it seems to be okay actually. And this was also after I got this coral color Tombow, and so I just went crazy with it. Near the end here, I must have been really busy because I didn't bother decorating anything. It was all just pen and like a little bit of decoration on the headers here. And I also had started using entire pages for each day. I can't remember if that was a conscious decision or if I just needed that much space. And this looks like the end. So this was from, I wrote it in the top here, January to April, the end of April. So moving right along, this is going to be a long one, guys. I hope that's okay. My Rhodia web notebook was my next one. And this one went from May to the end of September. And you can see I really latched on to that idea of progress bars, and I actually did pretty well in this month. I didn't do any writing, but other than that, I did really well. And the theme for this month was fountain pen doodles, so I did some nice little doodles around the edge. Same expense tracker, same gratitude tracker. And then this really sad looking writing tracker. It looks like I did do a little bit of outlining and a little bit of writing by hand, but nowhere near as much as I had planned to. Oh, right. I had forgotten about this as well. In May, I started doing the 100-day project, and I kind of kept up with it, but what's that, about half? I almost got halfway through it, and then I just couldn't keep up. So a couple of these I do remember I had fallen behind and caught up a couple of times throughout this project, and then after the like third or fourth time of letting myself lag behind and then having to do a bunch of drawing to catch up, I just gave up. It might be fun to go back and kind of do a little bit of these, because the way that I did the 100-day project was I would do 5 sketches every day, and they had to fall into these categories. So I did the human body / poses, human faces, birds. I really like doing the birds. The birds are so good. Land mammals, which probably should have been broken down into more specific categories because I struggled a bit thinking about what to draw each day because I had so many options. And then buildings was where I finally fell off the wagon. This month I also did another, I think this was Rock Your Handwriting. Just focused on really clean, neat printing. The numbers were interesting. I don't usually think about numbers when I'm thinking about handwriting. And it looks like I actually finished this one, which is pretty cool. This spread was another favorite of mine. I did this kind of mini time blocking down here where I assigned each of my goals a number. And these dots, I can't remember if they were estimates of how much time it would take or actual time. Probably estimates, I would think, the way they're laid out, and then I would block out which days of the week I was going to work on each different thing down here. Visually, I really didn't like this spread. This one, as you can see, is kind of a timeline for the whole day. And I really wanted a space for just writing down tasks, even if I don't need to actually see them. It helps me organize my day just to write everything down. And this one was kind of hard to work with because in order to write something down, I had to give it a time. And this looks like I'm back to 1 page per day. And June, again, I maintained the progress bars. I just really liked filling things in. It's just a lot of fun. And this was another month for writing that just didn't go as planned. I was really struggling with this draft, and I think part of the problem was month after month I just kept trying to write it and it wasn't working, and I was getting really frustrated with the story, and I think what I really needed was a break from that story, so I should have just put it away altogether and let it rest before trying to get back into it, which I'm hoping when I revisit it, I think mid-February is my plan. I'm hoping it will go a lot better than this because I've had time to kind of sit back and just let it be for a while. And so I'm hoping I can get into it with fresh eyes and kind of more excitement. So we're getting into June, and one thing I did in June that I just hated was I set up all my weeklies in advance, and you can see I just stopped using it. I didn't like it. And while we're here, I just want to talk about this page. This was just like a little journaling page where I collected my thoughts for the upcoming week. I like to use these as I need them, and I think they also give me some perspective looking back on what I was thinking, what problems I was facing, and what I did about them. And here's another one where I just journaled out what my goals were for the next week and then a quick little plan for how to achieve them. And one thing that I'm still doing is this kind of 2-column idea. A task list doesn't really need the entire width of the page, and so it gives me space to put tasks and then some kind of journaling next to it. Here we're at July, another progress bar month, and this one I tried a different approach to events that ended up not really working, where I would just put the date and what it was just as I got them. Time-based events not being in chronological order kind of threw me off a little bit, and so I didn't really use this very much. And this month I also did a different habit tracking method where instead of having a column for each habit, I just had a space and then I wrote down the number of the habit each day, and then kind of the more boxes I got to tick, it kind of ended up being like a bar chart a little bit. It was kind of cool, but it didn't really stick for whatever reason. And this is what the 3rd or 4th month of trying to get this story written. I just kept banging my head against that particular wall. And this week I tried something kind of neat where I tried a timeline for the week. So each of these sections is a different day. And then I think these center parts were kind of the box to check off for a task. It's kind of nice. I might try that one again. This spread was another one that I really liked, though I'm not entirely sure why. There's just something about the way it's laid out that I find really visually pleasing. Here we are at August. I think I meant to do progress bars for this month, but I think I got a little confused when I was setting it up. I think they were supposed to go up here, but I don't really remember. It's been a while since August. Maybe I just wanted a change. Another month of almost no writing that I just tried. See, I got really down on myself for it, like, no excuses, sad week. I really like adding little sketches because it helps me remember where I was at that point. Like, I know this was during my great Skyrim replay, and it kind of brings up all the feelings that I was feeling at that time just by seeing this little drawing. And this is really just more of a notes page. I have some meal planning stuff here. I have some journaling stuff. A little tiny plan for how I want to spend my time. Ugh, I hated this color so much. It was another one that I just dumped after a few days. In September, I tried something a little bit different as well. I listed all my goals in a great big list, and then I just wrote down kind of how I was progressing throughout the month. I did fall off this a little bit, and I think it was because I wasn't quite sure what was worth putting in here. It was just an extra bit of effort to think about if I finished something, was it worth putting in this space? Because as you can see, I do not have space for like 3 lines every single day or anything like that. So I had to kind of curate what went in here, and I think that extra step prevented me from using it a little bit. This month I switched up my expenses a little bit to write what I bought and why. And this would have been a little bit more useful if I only limit it to really really unnecessary things, because like for groceries I put down why, life. That's not very helpful, so yeah. I think this would work better if it was only for kind of fun, like entertainment style purchases, like new bike helmet for safety, obviously, right? And then this one, new toothbrush, old one was old. It's just a little silly. Goodness me, another month of just, I did not even realize, looking back, I had completely forgotten that I had been trying to write this for what, 4 months, 5 months in a row without success. Like, look, I'm 2,000 words in. I definitely need to remember this lesson and not do this again, ideally. Another layout I really liked is this 2 days per page layout. It usually looks very tidy, as you can see, and it also it's a nice compromise between space for tasks and space for journaling, because I just fill up whatever tasks I need, and then the rest of the day is just for journaling. And even when I don't specifically lay out 2 columns per page, I still kind of fall into that. Just like I said before, task lists almost never go past that middle of the page, and so reserving all this space for something that only ever uses up half the space is just kind of inefficient. And it looks like that was it. So this was the very end of September. When I had gotten to October, I did not think that this was enough. Sorry, this was enough space. So I just moved on. And ultimately, I did like the Rhodia notebook. It's a fine notebook, but I didn't really like the color of the pages. It's a little bit yellower than I would like. And nowadays, as you'll see from the next one, I'm just really into the Tomoe River paper. And so that is what I tried next. Since I only had a couple months left in the year, I went for this very thin little thing, and also I had ordered a Hipponoto notebook, and whoever commented saying that I should not hold my breath because they have been waiting over a year, you were right. I ordered it in mid-August, and it said at that time that it would be like 1 to 2 months delayed, and it's still at the beginning of January, still not here, still not shipped. I remember getting an email a couple weeks ago saying that they were starting to ship out the ones that were put in after the Kickstarter. I forget what they call them, late pledges, I think. But still no shipping notification, still no sign of when or if it's ever going to arrive. And so at the time, I did not realize it would be quite so long, and so I got this kind of just to tide me over. And it ended up lasting until the end of the year, and I filled this one out like almost, like there's one blank page in here and then everything else is filled out. So it was really perfect for 3 months for how I was doing things. And the paper is delightful. So the very first thing I did when I got this notebook was do this little watercolor test on the back where I watercolored, I wrote on it, I watercolored, I wrote on it, and then I watercolored the other side, because one thing I noticed in some notebooks, if you write on one side and watercolor on the other side, it will like suck the ink through the page, but this didn't happen here. There was the tiniest bit of what might be bleeding right here, but it's really not very noticeable. So overall, this notebook will have a lot of ghosting, like you can read everything through the back side of the page, but that doesn't really bother me, and I just like how thin and like soft the pages are. They flip very well. It's a very satisfying experience. And so October, as you can see, I returned to the progress bars, but this was a bad month. Pretty much in every respect. This was the month we had to say goodbye to our kitty. She got very sick with kidney failure and did not make it. So that happened, and then I encountered a lot of drama with my day job immediately after, and so my whole month was just shaken up right from the beginning. But I made it work. And I did make sure to maintain my healthy habits so I could be sure I was taking care of myself. Gratitude and expenses are normal. This was one of the few days where I did this like line a day type situation. I called it a quick log. It was meant to just put down a sentence every day saying what I did, how it went, and I just didn't really like this very much. I liked looking at longer form journaling, and then on top of this being a pretty sad month for me, I just wasn't really very happy with this spread. I was very happy with all the fountain pens that I used, and on this paper, this just looks so nice. The colors are crisp and all the shading is very nice, and the inks that sheen very well on this paper. This was my first experience with Noodler's Apache Sunset, and I don't like yellow. I really don't like yellow, and even orange is kind of iffy, but dang, I like this ink. It looks like fire. If it had a little bit more red in it, it would look exactly like fire, and I'm a huge fan of that. Especially with the kind of pale yellow-orange with this dark black color. Again, such a huge fan of this ink. It really blows my mind. So November, the idea behind these were that these bars would kind of fill up from the top and form progress bars, but as you can see, I did quite a bit of work this month, but I didn't get anything done except for NaNoWriMo. So, like, I did quite a bit of knitting, I did a ton of writing. There were some days where I got up to 3,000 or 4,000 words in one day, because I did get a little bit behind and then I had to catch up, and so goodness, there was so much writing. But I'm pretty pleased. I really like the draft I got out of it, and that's what I'm going to be writing today and through all of the rest of January, hopefully. My expense tracker was a little bit different. I intended to tally up what I spent in different categories at the end of the week. I didn't get to the last week. This happens to me a lot where I'm so excited to move on to the next month, I don't actually fill out the last day of a lot of these spreads. Like this one, like this bottom habit tracker is completely blank. And this spread remains one of my favorite spreads that I've ever done, and I can't really place why. Like this pink is nice, but it's not really my favorite kind of pink, and it's not particularly visually attractive. There's something about this page that I really, really like. Maybe the dots. I like the dots. This art journaling spread I did on an art video, and I journaled half of it and then I kept meaning to go back at the end of November and fill this in, and then it's kind of the same thing where I was so excited to move on that I just never came back here. The really exciting thing was that not only did I win NaNoWriMo this year, but I won it early. I was so proud of myself. Okay, we're finally to December. I've talked a bit about this a couple times, both on Instagram and on YouTube, but I really like these little squares. So the point behind these is that I write the goal in the top, and then each time I work on it for about an hour. I wasn't incredibly specific with what time these blocks represented, but I tried to estimate about an hour per block. And as the month progressed and I filled out these little blocks, I could really see what was taking my attention. So this knitting, gosh, I knit 2 blankets in the past 2 months, and this bar like filled up all the way in a couple weeks. It was crazy. My hands were hurting. I was up all night knitting, but they got done, and so I was really, really pleased with myself for that. But it was really nice to see how these different tasks filled up throughout the month. Some things did not get touched at all, which is okay. I'm not going to punish myself for that because I could see where my time was going, and that's where I wanted my time to be going. And my writing I tracked by time this month because my focus for this month was to reread my draft from NaNoWriMo, revise the outline, tighten things up. I talked about this before. My NaNoWriMo draft ended up being more of a zero draft where it was very, very loose and messy, and I changed things as I went through the story just on the fly. And so this month was all about collecting those changes, putting them into the outline so I had something really, really solid to start my next draft, which I guess would be draft 1 or draft 2. It depends if I'm counting NaNoWriMo as a zero draft or a first draft. And here is my revised social media tracker. As you can see, no charts on this page, just numbers, and even these like down arrows, I think I'm not going to include them in my next one. I think I'm only gonna draw out the up arrows just as kind of a little boost for myself. And also because the way I see social media, people don't usually see something that they're not a huge fan of and immediately unfollow you. Usually they unfollow people that over time they're not interested in. So the upticks are much more connected to the content that's being posted than the downticks. At least that's what I'm hoping. And I want to talk about this for a minute. So I painted these little bottles with the idea of turning them into stickers, and I discovered something on Redbubble and most or all print-on-demand services. They don't do paper stickers. They only do these like vinyl die-cut stickers, and a lot of them require this like 1/4 inch border around the edges. And then like if I were to get a Cricut machine and cut my own paper stickers, they would both be thinner and they would not need quite as much of this border around the edge. So I looked and looked and looked. I searched for hours to try and find a print-on-demand service that would print out paper stickers without this big ol' border around the edge, and I don't think they exist. If you know of one, please let me know what it is. And I think there are sites like Sticker Mule where you can order batches of stickers, but ideally the solution is that I don't have to package and ship things because I don't really have time for it. But if I was going to, I would want to do it myself. So if it turns out that the only way to get quality stickers is to print them out myself with a Cricut machine, or cut them out with the Cricut machine and mail them to people manually, I might have to do that. But if you know of a print-on-demand sticker printing service that does thin paper stickers without this huge border, please let me know, because that would save me quite a bit of time and effort if I want to provide cute journal stickers, which I kind of would like to do. I think it would be nice. Also, this one I didn't design. It's by someone on Redbubble that came up when I searched for probably cute dogs or something. Would recommend. The designs are very cute. I have a whole bunch of them. Here, see, I have a whole bunch left to use. This is a different artist, as you might guess from the style. But this is the same artist with these little doges, little sheeps. And then I did learn that my designs they really need to have stronger lines. They need a border, because these were just watercolor that I kind of sketched with ink around the edge, and it came out a little bit washed out. So I learned something with this test print, and I think I can improve on it. Okay, we're almost done here, and this spread was kind of a mess because it seemed like every time I turned around, another pen was running out of ink. So I started with this red ink that ran out. I moved on to Diamine Autumn Oak, that ran out as well, and then I ended up with this orange color. So it's kind of a mess, but also kind of nice because it let me start the new year with a bunch of fresh new ink. So that was kind of fun. And then the final bit here, I actually did this much earlier in the year, so like early December I think is when I did this, and it was kind of a brainstorm for what I wanted next year to look like. So like things I'm proud of, challenges, lessons I learned, goals for next year, what I need to do, and then what specific things will support these goals. So then I use this in a bunch of other journaling that I did just in a messy journal notebook to kind of design my happiness project. And that's the end. And that is all of 2018. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I personally had a lot of fun looking back on my year, but it was my year and my goals and my journaling, so that's to be expected. But I hope that this gave you some insight into the types of things that bullet journaling can offer and some ideas for you for the coming year. You know, maybe some of the things that I tried that didn't work out very well will work out much better for you. You know, that happens sometimes. We all work differently. We have different processes, and one of the big reasons I share this stuff is so that you guys can get ideas and think about how to improve your lives through journaling or through some kind of structured planning system. My videos for 2019 are going to be a little more spaced out. I'm hoping for a video every week. But there may be weeks where I skip it just because I want to focus on quality of my art and of my kind of vlog check-in videos, and since I'm not setting up bullet journal weeks in advance, I don't really have bullet journaling videos to do every week. So expect about 3 videos a month, maybe 4 if I can come up with something else that I think will be valuable to you. But anyway, thanks again for watching. I'll be back soon with another video, and I hope to see you there. Bye!